Happy to be here. This is really interesting because I used to be a student of theology. Very few people know this about me, but I used to work up there, behind the screen, at least for trial runs. And then I was a musician. So this sort of audience thing is quite familiar to me. Here's my Twitter, so fire away if you have questions or comments. I won't read them now, but I will eventually catch up with them. So here's a quick thing about what I do. Basically, this short film, which I actually bought for real money at iStockPhoto.com, that kind of shows what I do. I give people ideas about what's happening in the next 3 to 5 years, and I do this for media companies, content companies, artists, musicians, publishers, and pretty much anyone that asks me to. Here's a couple examples, some of my clients. But let's move on into the presentation. First of all, I want to thank a lot of people that I basically stand on top of. I call this proudly found elsewhere, PFE. There's all these people, and there's my Twitter fellows and my feeds. I want to say thank you to all those people that have enabled me to stand in front of you now and regurgitate what they have all written. I promise you I will try not to speak to the choir. I mean, obviously you're the choir now, just as memory serves you. I am supposedly this guy, but I'll try not to. I'll try to give you some ideas instead to bring you into the future. I think what we're looking at right now is what I call broadband culture. Many of you may know my third book called The End of Control. It's endofcontrol.com for the free download. I decided not to write the book last week or 2 weeks ago, not to actually finish it, because it's clear to everyone that control is fucked. Right? We are no longer in control. It doesn't matter. Everybody knows this. Everybody that cares knows this. It's not a new topic. This is a new topic. Once we're all connected around the world, right now 6.2% of the world has broadband. Once it's become 60%, then we're really living in a different world. Right now we're just gearing up, and I think we're going to see these kind of things. Of course, the flood of content. I mean, all you have to do is look at the Twitter feeds. Imagine those to be movies. I mean, the flood of content is crazy. And of course, the flood of how people connect. By the time I'm done speaking, I have another 1,000 followers. Right? Think of that flood, of course, now being fueled by mobile technology around the world. When you go to India, people don't use these boxes to communicate. They use mobile devices just like they do here, but only. In India, many kids, the first English word is Google. Right? That is how far we've gone. Right? I mean, absolutely amazing when you think of it, which way we're heading with this. We're heading into what I call total mobility. And of course, it's all geek audience here. And being a geek myself, I have every device known to man piling up at home. But total mobility means something different. That means we're always constantly peering and connecting. It's not sex, just peering and connecting. Constantly deep and vast oceans of content and information flooding over us, right? This is a whole different cup of tea than just a few years ago. Our brain wasn't made for this. I mean, at least not my brain. My kids are 14 and 19. Their brains are probably working better with this. We have to learn how to deal with this. We need this, right? This is a huge opportunity for business, the filtering. All of the broadcasters, the newspapers, the bloggers, the television stations, that's what they're going to do in the future, filter. Because I cannot listen to 62 million songs. That's the amount of songs published on the web. It's impossible to listen to all the movies. And then if we move forward and we look at Brazil, Russia, India, China, all those new countries, I mean, that's basically where we're going with this. They're going straight to digital content. From a place in India where they didn't even have radio, regular radio, they're going to downloading music and watching YouTube on their phones. When you go to Indonesia, they're going out in the country now with wireless broadband. They're going to watch YouTube videos and never had a TV. Straight to digital content. Straight to the mobile, straight to what I call advertising 2.0, a new generation of advertising. It's going to be absolutely amazing. We are chicken feed compared to those countries. And I'm not leaving out Africa, it just didn't fit on the map. But Africa, of course, is also a very big part of this. So this kind of mobile money, for example, right? Mobile money is going to revolutionize what we do with the mobile, how we purchase things. Banks will be contained in the mobile. In Africa, banks won't be buildings, they'll be devices, mobile devices. Location-based services. This is going to absolutely revolutionize how we interact. This is going to be a huge business, of course, but at the same time, adding location awareness is sort of like going from the dial-up to broadband. Right? I mean, the difference is vast. All of a sudden, when I'm in a city, I can find my friends. We can find out where we are. We can communicate. We can sell each other things, or swap tickets or whatever. And of course, ultimately, the social and cultural challenges are huge. Think about what that means if I can track where you are and where you've gone and maybe look backwards like Twitter. I can look at the location feed. Right? What will that mean for society, for my wife? So this is the world we live in. Right? I mean, I'm sure you feel pretty much the same. This is a thing I found in Thailand on the internet. When I was doing some work in Thailand, I was looking at Thailand and change, Google, and I found this. I mean, this is the embodiment of what we're going through every single day. As soon as the train is gone, the tents come up. Right. This is our life on the internet. And of course, the next thing is in Japan, where you don't want to be in the subway at 7 a.m. Now, this is what happens. The crowds, the crowdedness, right? They're actually pushing people into the subway. And then the next thing that happens, it's actually real, yes. Don't go there at 7. There's some sound on this, please.
Got it. So you want to work here? What really makes you think you deserve a job here?
Well, sir, I think I like it. I'm good at figures and I have a sharp mind.
Excellent. Can you start on Monday?
Yes, sir, absolutely, without hesitation.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And in conclusion, Jim, Bill, Bob, call Fred, Load, Dork, Ape, and Ted. Business is business. And as we all know, in order to get something done, you got to do something. In order to do something, we got to get to work. So let's get to work. Thank you.
This is a FedEx commercial showing how fast our world has become, right? So we're looking at change. We're looking at speed. We're looking at the huge masses of people, right, that lead us to the place to where we want to customize and personalize and be different. Sometimes we feel like this, like, it's just all these things are happening, right, all at the same time. This is a real challenge. And then Obama comes up. He says it's not a recession, to which I would add not just a recession, but a transition. You have to be an optimist to think of it that way. And he is obviously an optimist, right? Doing great work in the US, trying to go from war to peace, from domination to collaboration. Is there any bigger job in history than what he has to dig up 8 years of shit? So I also recently noticed 3 changes. This guy, who now is the governor of California. Right? Domination is out, collaboration is in. Lots of you would say, well, that's kind of obvious. But think about what that means. Think about collaboration. For example, Nokia putting the operating system, Symbian, into open source. Just last week, GlaxoSmithKline, one of the biggest pharma companies, putting billions of hours worth of research into public domain. Collaboration. So now I basically say the ecosystem, which is all about me making money, becomes an ecosystem. And this is hard, because it's a lot easier to be about myself. As you can tell, it's a lot easier to have a monologue than to have a conversation. And we all have to learn how that works. Control is out, openness is in. We're going to see a huge shift with Apple, a shift towards the open, otherwise they're gone. Nokia is leading the way with this, but many other companies, of course, in the same domain. Monologue is out, conversation is in. Look at Twitter, right? Why are we all doing this? Why will there be 50 million people on Twitter by the end of the year? Because we like conversations. We like to hook up with other people. So this kind of momentum that we're going to see is going to really be a lot of work. But then let's go to this one. Control. It used to be that if you had more control, you would make more money. This is business school knowledge. Controlling the ecosystem, controlling the customer, controlling distribution, control pricing, control the artist, control. Just until a couple years ago, this was the most plausible way to lots of money, was to control it. The whole thing. All of a sudden, because of the financial crisis, the banking crisis, the food crisis, energy crisis, the America crisis, control is changing as a sort of top thing that you have to have. This kind of idea of locking people on the internet that has been put to the ISPs all over Europe, the 3 strikes idea, is of course utterly ridiculous, because that control is not available. This is Star Trek material. This is not reality. So now we're moving on into a world where it used to be you dominate and you get the dollars. I mean, you were all very familiar with this, right? big companies, big states, big countries, big guns, big machines. You dominate and you get the money. Now it's different. This is a fantastic photo taken from a game called the Osani in Africa that I got from somebody who lives in Berkeley. Now collaboration is required to build something. This sounds like hippie California bullshit, right? But it's not. Right? This is real. All of the major companies are looking to collaborate to create new ecosystems. That's the only way forward. We cannot just solve the problem of the New York Times or the Dutch public broadcaster by saying we'll put a little Band-Aid on. This is going to take a larger effort to figure out what happens with content. What happens with advertising? Advertising today, as we have on the web, is useless. Marketing is pretty much useless because if we had the web, we wouldn't need advertising. That's what we have now. So we have to reinvent it. All these things are going to happen in a way of collaboration. So my image for this is pretty much this, which is I got from somewhere on the web. I think it was iStock photo again. But I'm glad to spend some money on content because I need it, because it's also a very good shot. Now this is Google's Eric Schmidt talking about.
I don't think we know exactly how that'll monetize. What we do know is that those products are getting built. And so the challenge and the opportunity is to figure out how to make money in that. But you won't get there by suing your end users. You won't get there by preventing this technology from happening. It's going to happen.
Very smart, Eric. I think this obviously summarizes and supports my thesis. Right? Command and control becomes coordinate and cultivate. That sounds like Europe versus America. Right? Command, control, cultivate, and coordinate. That is the future of our entire business, is to coordinate and to cultivate. All these sectors that used to be different, governments, advertisers, brands, now we have to come together and figure out how going forward content can make any money. This is the scene for the future. We need telecoms, device makers all come together and actually figure out how this works. Now again, many of you may say, oh, you know, this is like California pipe dream music. But not really, because going forwards, we're looking at this. We're looking at what I call the new data economy. A new way of taking the data that you generate by click streams, by clicking, by linking, by forwarding stuff, by being a member, that creates billions of dollars worth of data, which is kind of scary, of course, because it creates essentially a transparency of you. Which, if we put this together with the content economy, we can say this stuff can very easily pay for all of the music, all the television we need. Because this is what these guys want. Right? They want our data to give us better advertising, to sell their stuff. The $1 trillion marketing and advertising industries are in deep trouble. They need this. If they don't figure this out, they have nowhere to go, because they're losing the direct connection to the customer. And of course, this is all about mobility as well. So starting in 2009, I think we'll have a total convergence of the telecom and the web layers. And what's on top now, the search engines, the social networks, the content guys, they have to move down to the telecom guys, and the telecom guys have to move up into content. And this is going to be a real evolution and revolution, of course, especially for the mobile companies and the handset makers. We've seen Nokia comes with music. That's a step in this direction. We've seen now BlackBerry doing a content service for music. We've seen Sony Ericsson launching stores in Asia. Basically, it's a complete convergence of the telecom and the web layer. So based on this kind of thing, if we look at what Kevin Kelly has described, you know, as this network, it's a copy machine. Everything that's on the internet just plain old makes copies. No matter what we do, that's what it does. We have to figure out, and I think Google will this year really get involved in making this content monetizable. Google has no choice. If they don't get involved with this, the whole system collapses, because they're driving it forward with that $1.5 billion a month at this time in advertising money based on other people's content. That is the business model. So we have to figure out how to get that Christmas tree lit up again for content and how to work together with telcos to actually make this work. But here's a decade of control. I want to remind you of what happened until now so you know. Barry Gibbs from the Bee Gees, and he says, It is natural that somebody who writes a piece should have control of it, saying in a statement of the extension of copyright. In other words, he wants to write a piece and publish it and retain control to go back and do something else than planned. He wants to have basically remote control, you could say, over the piece he has published. Of course, if we take this one step further, Samuel Stein, who is a great producer, he said, had we remained in control of the hardware, we wouldn't have these problems today. We would be in charge of the iPod. We're talking about, domination dreams here. The iPod doesn't work with certain displays, like DRM prevents you putting in certain displays. Rhapsody, a great music service. Anybody here know Rhapsody? 750,000 subscribers after what, 8 years? That's ridiculous. And why is this? Because there's DRM, there's all kinds of stuff in it that nobody likes. They've basically integrated the disaster already from design. That's what we have here. Even Bob Dylan knows that DRM sucks by now. But now we have these guys stranded. Completely stranded. And basically what's happening with the ship of control, it's burning up as quickly as you can look. Of course, that was evaporated here. But you're doing it wrong. You can't fax a cat. Right? You cannot force people to buy music for money and then retroactively have your rights back. I mean, what a ludicrous idea. Right? That's just not the way it's going to work. So total control basically means total decline in dollars. It's as simple as that. If you want some control, yes, we can make a deal. That's what Google does. Google tells us it's all free and open and stuff, but it's not. Nobody knows the search algorithm. They don't publish it as open source. So there's some control, that's okay. Some control, but not, you can't ask me for total control and be your friend. That is completely no longer an option. So friction-based content businesses are going to get their heads cut off, like this routine says. Because basically there's no way of doing this. If you use friction to sell, you're going to be out of business. As simple as that. Now the content that we see today, this is where the content is. I mean, all of you guys know this already. The content is in the cloud. It's up there somewhere. Television, films, books, education, radio programs, everything we can think of. This is how we have to plan around our new business, with the stuff being in the sky, because that's where the content is, and that's, of course, where we are. We're all sort of the same, but only sort of. We're also quite different. So you put the two together, you arrive at a very simple formula. The cloud and the crowd. Our future is the cloud and the crowd. We can bring those two together. We're talking about 4.5 billion people with cell phones before too long. We can put those two together. We should get a lot more money than a measly 30 billion for the music industry. That's nothing. I think about books, games, television, publishing, and all these things. That is what we have to solve. I live in Switzerland. Made this photo in Switzerland. This kind of stuff won't work in the future. We have to say yes to that. We have no choices as content creators, publishers, technology companies to say this is the way it's going to be, even though it was easier 20 years ago when we were publishing copies and selling copies. It's not going to come back. It's time to switch to permission. It's time to give a flat rate license to music and then other content to be integrated into the access to music, like radio 100 years ago. Radio, if you remember, if you're that old, was illegal. For a long time, I think 25 years in Europe, 15 years in the US. Because radio was free music. Free music is bad. That's what we found out there. It didn't work. They had to give a license to radio. The same thing is going to happen on the internet. We need a flat collective license for the use of music on the web. So what we're seeing right now in terms of the development in general, if you're in the content business, selling copies goes down and may eventually come back a little bit, but selling attention, attention-based income. That's not just advertising. There's a slew of things, right? You should read kk.org, Kevin Kelly, right, who describes the new generatives. Now, the European Commission has said the idea of unplugging people that download stuff from the internet is ridiculous, and it's for this reason. Because when you unplug people, you create, of course, this attention, which creates a negative effect on the entire economy. So this idea isn't going to fly in Europe. Maybe it will fly in France, but if that's still Europe. So this kind of idea that was, just a few years ago is game over, and I think a lot of people who have pronounced this kind of idea are going to be impeached. I have to bring this up again because it's important. This is in San Francisco, of course. Where else would you find? Sorry about this. This thing is really doing what it wants here. Not my usual clicker. I'm not used to delays. So I think people have to be impeached and bring up these ideas. Why do we need people that tell us that we can't do stuff? Right? Where's the musical Obama? Right? Where's the Obama of the content business? Who's going to put forth things that actually work rather than declare war? And here's, of course, one more tiny change. This. All of us are now broadcasters. Some of us are lousy broadcasters. Lousy writers, lousy composers. But nevertheless, we're broadcasting, as you can see here. And this is the image we're getting, right? We're getting a multitude of these things happening at the same time. Why is this important? Because it feels like we can participate. Brands are now also becoming broadcasters to where they essentially broadcast messages, but as one of us. And this is a big difference, of course. So for me, they're really more like narrowcasters. They're sending me messages just for me, if they are successful on Facebook. Conversation leaders, participants, and engagers. For example, if you look at Intel, the new Intel School website, a blog, right, engages with users just like Google is trying to engage with users on Twitter. And of course, belatedly, the Britannica is giving me a free trial activation as a blogger. What about 50 years too late? Right? Have you heard of Wikipedia? But now they're sending me emails, say, please come to Britannica. I'm like, why? Click, delete. Right? So I think marketing and advertising as we knew it is just about dead. That's because the internet and connectivity that we have to each other doesn't need it. Research has shown that the word of a CEO of a major company counts less than the word of your buddy on Twitter or on Facebook, even if you haven't met. If the CEO says, I am going to offer this to you for a deal, you still don't believe it the same way that somebody in your network does. Right? So why do we need marketing and advertising as we know? We don't. We have to reinvent. I think going forward is going to be trust and openness that makes the dollars and also earns the love. Back to the California hippie. Symbian, and of course, here's a study from Edelman saying, a person like yourself, that's the person you trust. That's not news, but I think it would make a great business model. People subscribe to people. They don't just subscribe to broadcasters or to media. So here's the question I want to pose to you. Who do you trust? The question is, don't ask who will buy, but who will trust you. That's how you make money. It's based on trust. I'm going to give you money. The best-selling record on Amazon.com in 2008 was Nine Inch Nails' Ghosts. And it was given away for free the entire year. It was the best-selling album on Amazon.com, a paid album on Amazon.com. Why do people spend money if they can get it for free? Because they trust you, right? They want to give you money. That's the message we can learn from this. So this kind of thing in the future, of course, is word of mouth and words of mouth belong together. I think this is basically where we're heading. This is not going to be entirely easy to synchronize, but maintaining trust will be very hard work. Google is trying really hard. You can say anything you want about Google, but they're giving you an option to opt out of the behavioral targeting, which is like obviously a big issue. And of course, Facebook. Right? Facebook changed the terms of use. We all screamed at them. They went away and said, never mind, we'll go back. Right? That's what you call trust. Have you seen a company like Sony Music coming up and saying, we're sorry, guys, we sued 27,398 people. Right? We're going back and giving you the music in the way that you want? No, they're not doing that. If they did that, they could be big again. And of course, in a way, it's good that they don't do that. So, to do this, to put myself into the hand of a company like this, I'm going to think hard before I do that. Where do I do this? I do it for Skype. I do it with Google. I do it with Amazon. I do it with eBay. Maybe Netflix. Maybe Apple. Do you want to go that far? But it's a choice we have. This is what's going to matter in the future to make money. Can we have this video? And even George Bush has a comment on this. What's happening? Can we have some sound here? No sound? Okay, never mind. It's only George Bush. We don't need him. George Bush is a parody of where George Bush is being cut and pasted and saying, you know, it's hard work, it's very hard work, and so on. You may know. But anyway, going forward, this kind of idea for the internet, of course, is utter stupidity. Right? We can't market on the internet by yelling. But many of us are still trying that. I mean, what is email, right? Email is yelling, translated. Twitter is not, Facebook is not, LinkedIn or Zing or whatever is not yelling in the same way, right? So if we keep on yelling, I think, in advertising, we don't make money. The new thing is we talk more and we sell more. And this is kind of weird, right? Because talking actually requires energy, conversation, a flat structure. One of my clients in Indonesia Telecom, and it's absolutely amazing how they talk to each other. The CEO is sitting right next to the 17-year-old programmer. Everybody has ideas about where it's going. So this kind of situation happens. You know, people tweet me about Medium, and here's the guy, of course, who tweeted me about being in Amsterdam. And here is the Luxor Las Vegas, and EMI now is Twittering as well. And even worse, if you say something on Twitter that makes people not buy you, like I tweeted this about the MacBook having DRM in the display, this guy comes right back 40 seconds later. You would think that'd be smarter. That scuppers my plans for a notebook. So this is how you can sell and how you cannot sell, because you don't have conversations, or you do have conversations. And this whole thing is really accelerating very, very quickly. Another slick movie I have for you here. So basically what we're seeing here right now, this is only a slice of with the total tip of the iceberg. Imagine 4 billion people doing this, the mayhem of conversations. Right? How do we actually deal with all these things? I mean, this is not going to be easy. I think this requires a total reset of a lot of things that we do, especially the basic question, how do we sell? How do we generate money from what we do? What is the business model going forward? And you can see America, for example, is in this position of the total reset. And if we can take America as an example and say, when that comes to Europe, the reset is not going to be easy for us as well. Kevin Kelly, one of my favorites, says, wherever attention flows, money will follow. And you can say anything you want about Kevin in terms of his far-out theories and ideas, which I wholeheartedly agree with. This is correct. The first thing about making money is to get attention. Every artist knows that. You take it further to businesses, same thing. So we're looking in the direction of where everything is becoming open. Again, GlaxoSmithKline giving away this from Wired magazine, giving away the entire cancer research. Nokia saying openness is a basic requirement. I mean, this is completely anti-business school, right? Control is a requirement. That's business school. Not openness. What a stupid idea. And then we have this on the web. Every other page says share this. I mean, there isn't a single page left without sharing. Right? That is where everything goes. That is what's driving the power of the network, the sharing. The Guardian in the UK is publishing all of their content through an API. If you're a newspaper in China, you can rebuild the Guardian in Chinese using their content for free. And the BBC is saying, okay, use our stuff to build your stuff. Wow, this is a whole new thing. Use our stuff to build your stuff. This would be like saying, take my card so you don't have to buy one. Amazing. How will they make money with this in the connected economy? I think basically what we're going to see is that centralized models are becoming very, very hard to maintain. Because centralized models are very expensive, and we don't pay attention anymore. So you see a tendency from Microsoft Windows to Google, from Microsoft running the world's OS, essentially. Now it's Google, the Google operating system, and they will do it to the mobile. Make it available for everyone. You see MTV becoming YouTube. Who runs the programming department at YouTube? You guys do. Not a bunch of guys in some office somewhere getting money for the placement. Traditional telecom and Skype, cable TV, internet TV, and the Wall Street Journal and the Guardian. Those are the trends we're going to see from centralized to decentralized. So if you start a business, make it decentralized. Widgets, we were talking about widgets earlier, right? Obviously that is part of the widget strategy. On the iPhone, the searches are 50 times more than any other handset. Why is this? Because the control and the interface allows people to do it much quicker. It's also a decentralized ways using own applications and widgets. And we end up with this. End up with this sort of primordial soup. Right? Out of this, figuring out business plan is going to be harder, but it can be done going forward. We're seeing these trends, and we discussed this earlier in digital content. These are my own trend. They're not based on any facts, just soft facts here, right here in my brain. So in terms of music, music is already around 20% digital. That's going to increase to almost 100, right? Follows by games and books, magazines, print, and of course newspapers. If you look at these tendencies of how much of the revenues will be digital, then you can say, well, wow, we're talking about, I don't know, $100 trillion economy here. If this all is going to digital, I mean, that's obviously where it goes. Now, the CEO of Microsoft, Steve Ballmer, says there'll be no stuff, no content left that does not go over the IP network. And of course, he's from Microsoft. He has to say that. But ultimately, what we need for this is connectivity and back to the filter. Who cares about all of the TV shows of the world? Give me exactly what my buddies like, what my playlist like, what is the most synchronized with what I do. And here's a fact I got from the industry standard a few days ago. Print in the New York Times costs twice as much as sending everybody a free Kindle. Think about that fact, what that means, whether it's true or not. Basically, what we see right now in digital content, it's so much more efficient, cheaper, and more economic, and also greener, of course, to do this. This is absolutely inevitable. You see it happening all over the place. So this is what I've been talking about for the last 10 years, starting with my first book, The Future of Music, and with my last book, The End of Control. Content belongs into the faucet, into the plumbing. Music should be like water or like electricity, which we all pay for. Reminder, it's not free. It feels like free. That's a lot better. We pay for water when we move into a house. We don't have to call some agency to get the plumbing going. It's already there. We fill up the pool every day 3 times, we pay more. That's what you call feels like free until you actually use a lot more of it. And we're not talking about the text here. I think the biggest problem, for example, on Kindle is that if you buy the ebook, it's $18, and the printed book is $21. That doesn't make any sense, does it? It doesn't make sense for us, but it makes sense for the publisher because of cannibalization, so-called. That's why the songs on iTunes are €1 each. I mean, this is a ridiculous proposal. Not because I don't want to pay €1, but think about this. If a song was 15 cents, you could buy it legally. Would any of you bother for downloading for free? Probably not. If you go to ZML.com, anybody know ZML? I don't want to promote them because I don't know how legal they are. It's a download site for movies. They have about 3,000 or 4,000 movies. It's $2 each. They take the money, but they don't pay anyone. That's my hunch. But I use them anyway, right? Because guess what? In Switzerland, I cannot get iTunes movies. And if I did get them, it'd be $20 for a download. I mean, the stupidity of this has to go away. I think what we need is a pipeline where the content is integrated. So this is we're going to see in the next few years all of the governments asking the content owners for a license for the internet, starting with music. So as soon as you turn on the web, you're legal to do what you want. Listen to, download, exchange, whatever you want. It's all included. Not a tax, but a commercial deal like radio. Radio is free, but yet billions of dollars are being generated on radio. So clearly, I think the printing press gave birth to copyright. Some say it's bad, some say it's not bad. I am kind of agnostic on this. I just say it doesn't really make money today. Today, the internet gives birth to sharing rights and usage rights. How we get paid, how we transact, how we make money together. You've heard about these things. Freemium, free, feels like free. Chris Anderson has a great new book coming out free. You should order it. It's a great book. I've seen some of it. But he explains all these things. It's also free. You can get it for free. So it's very interesting to see how that actually jives with the broadband culture. How to make money? How does Flickr make money compared to iStock Photo? Why do I buy photos at iStock Photo? Not because the photos are better, but because I can find them. They have a database I can actually search. Right? So I'm paying $5 for the photo on iStock Photo that's free on Flickr because I pay for the package, for the searching. We're going to see these things becoming completely intermingled. And Skype, of course, makes a great example here. 250 million people using Skype, many of you, I'm sure. The story of Skype is quite simple. Free gets my attention. Merit and trust gets my money. How many of you have Skype out? Right? How many have bought phone numbers on Skype? You know, where you can get calls in. Right? Lots of people use Skype. The upselling is phenomenal. Skype is going to come out of the hiding in the next few years and actually make real money with this. I think we're going to see some great benefit on this. So I think I have to wrap up pretty soon, right? Okay. So there's some predictions. The next 18 months, Twitter will reach 50 million users. And I would say by the end of the year. I mean, look at this. Right? What has been more viral than Twitter? What is so great about Twitter? We're going to see 50 million users there. Facebook will become the default social utility, like the BBC. They will also become the biggest global content broadcaster. Facebook launched in the US last week a deal with Netflix. You can watch your Netflix movie through Facebook. 250 million people connected on Facebook doing stuff every single day. That's bigger than the BBC. I think it's just about the same, probably. We're going to see all these social networks becoming broadcasting or narrowcasting platforms for all kinds of content. Google will double the advertising revenue because of mobile, because they're the biggest mover there. The RIA, the Recording Industry Association of America, and the IFPI will go bankrupt because nobody wants to pay for this stuff anymore. It doesn't make money. Even the record labels are saying, why are we paying? We're not getting anything from you guys. Just a bunch of lobbyists. Now, telecoms will get flat fee content licenses because, imagine this, if you pay €1 a week per user as a telecom, you can collateralize that with the revenues that come in when they're all legal. It's as simple as that. Our attention in the network, our legal behavior, legalized behavior, you should know about that in Holland. So our behavior there creates money. Right, that the telcos can use to actually pay for the licenses, if they ever got a license. The problem is not that the telecoms or the users don't want to pay for music. The problem is that license doesn't exist. It's $100 or $1. Take it or leave it, my way or the highway. So we've taken the highway. Skype will reemerge, and I will actually make honor circle at Lufthansa. So here's my summary. I think basically it comes down to this: participate or be participated. This is a great example for the music business. Right. I mean, just standing there flailing the legs and saying, oh God, really, let me down. Right. We have to participate, otherwise it's over. We can take the example of Google and we can say, opt out. This is important. I want people to give me the right to opt out. I'm going to pay for my privacy because I'm an old guy. Right? Young people will not do this. They will say, whatever you want, as long as I get free stuff, I'll do whatever you want, especially in Asia. The more naked, the better. Right? But I'm going to be willing to pay €100, that's my broadcasting license, a year, right, to stay out of this if I want to. So Google is doing this: trust, trustworthy, trusting, trusted, trustful, whatever combination of words you want to think of using Wordle. So that is what matters. That is where the future money comes from. Any brand that's not trusted is finished. We can see that in airlines, travel, of course, banking, energy, devices, and so on. So I'm pretty much done. Now we're going to take some questions. Thanks for listening. I have a final quote. If you want to take it home: we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. I think that's a good summary for my presentation. Thanks very much. Let's take some questions.
That was really stunning, Gerd. Thank you very, very much. You were fantastic 6 years ago, but you're still there. Witnessing the back channel, lots of rumor right now, and so it's really, really amazing.
Thank
so
you.
now time for some questions. Anyone?
You did
You
did something
Steven.
amazing. You just had one of the longest MoMo speeches and everyone listened, so.
Well, that's good.
Hi, Gerd.
I knew you were going to ask the question.
Yes, we talked before. Thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. I was thinking about a very pregnant example of this problematic thing we've had here recently in Holland. Are you familiar with the FAB channel situation?
Of course, yes.
Could you give us an idea of what we could do, or what other type of business model could be implemented to get a service like that back online and running effortlessly?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I mean, I think as a consumer, the biggest thing we have at our disposal is refusal. We refuse to cooperate with something that doesn't work for us. Right? But don't buy something that doesn't work. You know, as the editor of ZDNet said 7 years ago, he said, don't buy music with DRM, it's crap. Right? So if we go to the place where we say we are going to actually really push for what we want, I think we could achieve it. And of course, the artists want the same thing. Don't forget that. They want to talk to you. The problem is, as long as we sort of play along, you know, we're in the position of basically just giving the power back. So I think a lot of these things are political questions, quite obviously. It's a question of saying, make it legal. Again, you should know about that in Holland, how that works. When you make something legal, you can find a way to contain it or to work it. Right? When you criminalize what people do on the web, you achieve nothing. Everybody routes around you, you get zero. That's what happened to the FAB channel. Well, if they had not gotten the licenses and basically be in, you know, Polynesia somewhere, they could have continued to do what they're doing, which is to publish content that wasn't entirely licensed. To pay for the licenses, yes. Because basically what we're seeing right now is a disconnect between the reality of what happens on the web in terms of revenues and what's being asked. The same thing happened to YouTube in the UK. Why did YouTube stop negotiating in the UK? Because what the PRS, the Performing Rights Society, was asking was like this compared to what was actually coming out of the system. So as long as we have the exclusive right of the content owner to refuse the right, we have a serious problem. The copyright law is clear on this. I mean, they can sit on this as long as they want. Right? So basically, the only way that will change this is to say, well, this is like radio. Everybody's using, nobody's paying. Let's find a way to make this legal so everybody can get the benefit. This is a political question.
Okay, a second question. Anyone? No?
Don't be shy.
Marjolein. Here you go.
Hi, my name is Marjolein Kamphuis. I work at MTV. You briefly discussed the music business. How do you think the people at Universal and EMI are going to make money in the future? I don't mean the artists. I actually mean the record companies.
They should buy my books. No, basically, today it's very simple. It's all about adding value. If you can add value, then you can grow. You have business ideas that add value, then you can grow. But if all you do is you throw sand into the machine, right? You pour sand down the tank of the car, then that's not adding a lot of value. Universal has, of course, been very smart in that they have completely diversified. So there's another strategy, right? It's not really about music. It's about everything known to man that's entertainment, which is probably a good strategy. The rest of it, basically, as I said before, if the major labels had done what other companies have done, which is to say, we're opening up, we're doing it like this, like you ask us, like Facebook, they'd be doing great. As long as you try to have control and the money, it is not going to work, because we're not playing along. The users aren't coming along. So my advice to the majors has always been, is, you know, ease up on the control so you can make some new money. That's really what it comes down to.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Gerd.
Thank you.